Here to break it all down for us is General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being here. First of all, you've been talking for a long time now about fighting to win, not just to pull a draw, but to win this battle and helping the Ukrainians do it. It sounds like some people in the administration have gotten the message. I want to play a little bit from Admiral John Kirby's presser last Friday to a question put to him by Lucas Tomlinson from Fox News about whether we are encouraging a win by the Ukrainians. Let's play the soundbite and get your reaction. Roll tape.
Ukraine. We want the Ukrainians to win this war. And we want to see Ukraine not have to fight for its own sovereignty. We want to see Mr. Putin and the Russian army lose this invasion, lose this fight inside Ukraine.
It's nice to hear Admiral Kirby spell it out that clearly, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's great. And, you know, it's really the first time we've heard that from the administration. I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, that's where the Pentagon leaders actually feel. But Secretary Blinken avoids the subject. The National Security Advisor does the same. And certainly the President of the United States does the same. I was very encouraged by the Prime Minister of the UK going to Kyiv this weekend, Boris Johnson, and standing there with President Zelenskyy, obviously, and walking around the city itself, but nonetheless telling him that he's there to help him win and achieve that victory and drive the Russians out. I mean, and that is the key point here. I mean, what I believe is going on with this administration, and they parse words very carefully, David, and I know you pay a lot of attention to it. They talk about Russia has had strategic failure. And what they're interpreting that to mean is that Russia, because they've had this strategic failure, then we're on a path to make a deal, to have an agreement with them. And that is not what Zelenskyy wants. That's right. Because he knows full well if that takes place, Russia right now has more territory that they're owning and occupying than what they did prior to February 24th. And obviously, they've committed enormous atrocities on his people. And he wants to stop those atrocities by driving them out. He's not looking for a deal at this time. He's looking to remove the Russians from his territory. And that's the distinction that is not being made. I'm convinced the administration is looking for an end to this and a peace agreement. The problem with that is that leaves the Russians inside Ukraine. Yeah. And that is what Zelenskyy is prepared to accept, certainly at this time.
Well, the other thing you mentioned before is that they use just the talking, just sitting down and talking. They will say anything and agree to have talks and everything. But while they're talking, they're using that as an opportunity to rebuild their forces, no?
Yes, and the second thing they do, we've seen this time and time again in Syria. Every ceasefire in Syria was violated. And we've seen it with the ceasefires in the Donbass region over the past 8 years as well. And what they do is they rebuild forces, but they also tactically reposition forces to gain advantage. Yeah, so if the Russians go to ceasefire, the Russian will break the ceasefire and take advantage of it. That is the historical pattern.
Now, you mentioned Syria. The Russian general who was involved in so many massacres in Syria that you have been documented here and by you and others, Alexander Vernikov. We're showing a picture of him now. He's now apparently got the Ukraine portfolio from Putin. This could not be good. I mean, for all the horrors we've seen, this guy is the master of those horrors by the Russian army, isn't he?
Well, we're overplaying this hand here with this guy. I mean, he was in Syria for 1 year, and yes, he was a butcher there for sure, but all Russian generals are, and he's no different from the other ones as far as I'm concerned. But what's notable about him, he has been in the southern district, where Crimea and the Donbass, he's been there since 2016, 6 years. So he's been involved in the Donbass region with Russian separatists and Russian military. And when war was declared on February the 24th, he's been in charge of the whole southern area. So Mariupol and that destruction has taken place in that city is underneath his command.
Wow.
And certainly he's doing to Mariupol what he's done to Syria. Syria isn't the issue here. It's what this man has been in charge for 6 years here, and what he's done since February the 24th is really the issue. The reason, I mean, the Russians overplaying it in the sense that, yeah, he's in charge because all the forces, the reinforcements are coming into his district. So naturally he'd be in charge.
Yeah.
So I think we're making more out of it than what it is. And he is just like other Russian generals. He will execute the Russian doctrine, which certainly is to raise cities and destroy innocent civilians on a horrific scale. They are all cut from the same cloth.
You know, what bothers me when I hear the mainstream media talk about this, they say that it's the Russian military's disregard for civilian casualties. It's much more than that. There is a deliberate effort to go after civilians to create a sense of terror. I mean, it is the blitzkrieg effect that Nazi Germany used. It's that they are not just disregarding civilian casualties, they're aiming for civilian casualties, aren't they?
Yeah, this is no such thing as collateral damage or something like that, a fancy term to use when you're trying to hit a military target and you kill civilians. In doing that, I mean, the United States military and NATO countries take absolute pains to avoid civilian casualties. We actually, and I've seen it with my own eyes, we put our troops in harm's way to avoid civilian casualties. And that is a huge distinction from what we're seeing here. Here, the military objective that they're assigning to their forces are the destruction of civilian lives inside these cities. That is the military objective. There's no military target there of any value. The target are the civilians. And that's what makes it a war crime.
Well, it's extraordinary because you have been mentioning it for years now, that this is the way the Russians fight. I think a lot of people felt that because this was in the center of Europe, that there would be, everybody has a camera there. They wouldn't have the kind of exposure or they would have more exposure there than they did in Syria, so they wouldn't try it. But are you at all surprised that they're using precisely those same tactics that they use in Syria?
No, not whatsoever. And remember, Putin is the same person, you know, who used his FSB to blow up apartments in Moscow. And those apartments, they allege, were apartments blown up by Chechen rebels. Yeah. And that was his basis for going into Chechnya. And the reason why we know that is the third apartment that they were about to blow up, the FSB got caught at it. And so we know the kind of person that Putin is. Here he is, blowing up innocent civilians living in apartment buildings to justify his use of military force against the Chechens. That is how Putin began his reign as president of Russia back in 2000.
All right. I just want to end on a positive note. You mentioned the Boris Johnson walk with Zelenskyy, which was extraordinary. A lot of people woke up on Saturday morning seeing that. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. They thought it was some kind of fancy camera work to get those two to look like they were together. But he was there. He walked the walk. I mean, first of all, it was a very brave gesture on Boris's part, but what did it mean to the Ukrainian people, and particularly the Ukrainian army, to see the Prime Minister of England walking the streets of Kyiv?
Well, I'm sure they're playing that video wherever they can inside of Ukraine and social media and the like, to have that visitor, someone of his prominence. And he has been like Roosevelt was to Churchill in helping Britain be saved, you know, prior to the United States going into the war, where Churchill said Roosevelt saved Britain. Boris Johnson is much like that. He's given tanks now to Zelenskyy. The United States aren't giving any tanks, for sure, and there's other things that we could be giving that we're not giving. So I really appreciate what he has done here, and certainly, and it's a huge boost to Zelenskyy himself. Listen, Zelenskyy has to deal with his own fears, threat to his life on a daily basis. He's hoping his family is in a safe place. Certainly they've got him in a secure place. And he's watching his citizens being killed by the thousands every day. You can imagine the emotional and psychological pressure that he feels. And here comes this leader who sort of parachutes in to the center of his city there and shakes his hand, pats him on the back, and just gives him some inspiration, you know, to keep it up, keep going forward. You know, you're doing absolutely the right thing.
I got to run, but I have to ask, should President Biden do the same?
Should have been there a few weeks ago, as far as I'm concerned. United States is the global leader. We're first at providing support, at first also in providing our leadership.
Yep.
We shouldn't be second best at this. I'm not even convinced the president will go.
General Jack Keane, thank you very much, General. Great to see you. Appreciate you coming in.